In modern media, public discourse is often less about genuine conversation and more about performance. The stage is set, the lights are bright, and the questions are sharp, not necessarily because they seek truth, but because they aim to craft a spectacle. This environment creates a unique challenge for individuals who step into the spotlight, especially those with firm convictions and emerging voices. Understanding how media tactics operate in such settings is not only essential for public figures, but also for any individual who seeks to engage critically with the information they consume. The tactic in question involves using humor, irony, or seemingly lighthearted framing to undermine a person's position or credibility. Often the questions may appear innocent or humorous on the surface, but they are constructed in such a way that any direct answer seems absurd, while any deflection appears evasive. This is not an accident. It's a rhetorical strategy. It forces the person being questioned into a position where the optics of their response can be interpreted as weakness, ignorance, or dishonesty, regardless of the content of their answer. This style of questioning does not prioritize mutual understanding or the pursuit of facts. Instead, it leans into emotional manipulation. The goal is to make the audience laugh, nod, or scoff, not necessarily to think. The questions often rely on pre-existing narratives or assumptions about the individual being interviewed. This makes it particularly difficult for the person to explain themselves without first dismantling those assumptions, a task that is nearly impossible in the confines of a time-limited, emotionally charged conversation. For those watching such an exchange unfold, it's easy to mistake cleverness for correctness. A sarcastic tone or a quick comeback can seem more convincing than a detailed, reasoned argument. This is part of what makes such tactics so effective. They exploit the human brain's tendency to respond more strongly to emotional stimuli than to nuanced reasoning. When someone in the public eye is put on the defensive through ridicule or mischaracterization, it becomes difficult for them to shift the conversation back to substance. For the individual on the receiving end, the key is to recognize the dynamic at play. This requires emotional discipline and mental clarity. When someone tries to bait you into a reaction, through condescension, contradiction, or selective framing, the most powerful response is often to remain centered and deliberate. This does not mean avoiding the question, but rather redefining the terms of the conversation. It's about taking back control, not through volume or aggression, but through strategic clarity. Another layer to this tactic involves interruption and control of pacing. In some formats, the person asking the questions maintains not just the narrative framing, but also the timing and rhythm of the exchange. This can prevent the interviewee from completing a thought or expanding on a point. It creates the illusion that they are evasive or inarticulate, when in reality, they are being actively prevented from making a complete argument. This, too, is part of the performance, a choreography designed not to clarify, but to corner. Understanding. This helps explain why preparation is so critical. When walking into a setting where these tactics may be employed, it's essential to anticipate not only the content of possible questions, but also the form they may take. A well-prepared speaker is not just armed with facts, they are ready for manipulation. They understand the psychology of media, the tempo of performance, and the traps hidden within casual questions. This awareness allows them to stay grounded when others might panic or become reactive. For viewers and listeners, media literacy becomes equally important. One must learn to distinguish between an exchange that seeks understanding and one that seeks entertainment at someone else's expense. When we consume content passively, we risk adopting whatever narrative is being offered to us, especially when it is wrapped in humor or drama. But by paying closer attention to the structure of the exchange, the interruptions, the framing, the emotional tone, we can begin to see beyond the surface. We start to ask, is this question seeking information, or is it setting up a punchline? It's also worth considering why these tactics are used so often against certain individuals. Often, when someone challenges prevailing norms or steps outside the expected mold, especially if they are young, outspoken, or represent a perspective that is underrepresented in mainstream discourse, they become targets for these rhetorical ambushes. The goal is not necessarily to challenge their ideas, but to discredit them in the court of public perception. It's easier to mock someone than to engage with their arguments. It's safer to highlight a gaffe than to acknowledge a valid point that contradicts the dominant narrative. In such moments, those who understand the game have an advantage. They don't waste energy trying to win the approval of those who never intended to give it. Instead, they speak through the noise. They address the audience beyond the interviewer, the viewers, the listeners, the readers, who are still open to hearing something real. And when they do this effectively, they don't just defend their ideas, they expose the tactics being used against them. They reveal the machinery behind the media moment, and in doing so, they reclaim their voice. This doesn't mean that all interviews or debates are inherently unfair or manipulative, but it does mean that some are. And recognizing the difference is part of being an informed citizen in a media-saturated world. The ability to identify rhetorical traps, emotional baiting, and spectacle over substance is a crucial skill, not just for those in the spotlight, but for anyone who values truth over theatrics. When we can do this, we move closer to creating a culture where dialogue is valued over dominance and where ideas are tested by logic, not by ridicule. In the arena of public discourse, particularly within high-stakes media or political environments, pressure is not a possibility, it is a guarantee. The ability to remain grounded in such moments is not merely a desirable trait, but an essential skill. Composure under pressure is what separates those who are momentarily heard from those who are meaningfully understood. It is what allows a speaker to not only defend their views, but also to elevate the entire conversation. When the pressure mounts, when the tone sharpens, the audience leans in and the questions become more pointed, staying emotionally steady is a quiet but powerful form of strength. This strength does not emerge by accident. It is cultivated through self-awareness, intentional practice, and the discipline of not allowing external chaos to provoke internal instability. In emotionally charged settings, people are often tempted to respond in kind, escalation for escalation, sarcasm for sarcasm, heat for heat. But those who understand the true nature of influence realize that maintaining control of one's emotional state is the most effective way to remain persuasive. It sends an unspoken message. I am not shaken. I am not baited. I am still thinking clearly. Remaining grounded begins with a deep connection to one's core values. When a person knows what they believe and why they believe it, they become more resilient in the face of critique or confrontation. Their confidence doesn't come from the illusion of being unchallenged. It comes from knowing they've already considered the criticism. They've done the internal work. So when someone questions them or even tries to corner them, their response doesn't come from defensiveness. It comes from clarity. They're not trying to convince others to believe them out of desperation. They're inviting others to see the strength of their reasoning. In live interviews or debates, this internal steadiness is often tested through interruptions, rapid-fire questions, or emotionally provocative language. These tactics are not designed to explore someone's viewpoint but to throw them off balance. It is in these moments that true discipline reveals itself. An emotionally reactive response may feel gratifying in the moment, but it rarely serves the long-term goal. The person who can maintain a calm tone, steady posture, and focused language signals not only intelligence but maturity. They elevate the conversation by refusing to be pulled into emotional theatrics. Emotional intelligence plays a major role in this process. The ability to recognize one's own emotions as they arise and choose how to respond rather than react is a foundational skill in remaining composed. A person may feel anger, frustration, or anxiety rise in the heat of questioning. But rather than letting those feelings dictate their behavior, they learn to acknowledge them silently and continue forward with intention. This is not suppression. It is control. It is the strategic management of emotion, not the absence of it. Such self-regulation has a ripple effect. When one person in a high-pressure exchange remains calm, it often disrupts the dynamic. The aggressor begins to look more emotionally volatile, while the calm individual becomes the emotional anchor of the moment. Audiences are perceptive. They can feel the energy of the conversation. When someone refuses to be rattled, it forces others to take notice. not just of their composure but of the substance beneath it. A grounded response also creates room for deeper engagement. When someone is emotionally reactive, they often speak in shorter, more defensive statements. But when they remain calm, they are able to articulate ideas more fully and with greater nuance. They don't just respond to the question, they reframe it, add context, and draw the conversation back to a point of substance. They are not limited by the energy of the moment. They rise above it and redefine it. This isn't to say that emotion has no place in public dialogue. On the contrary, passion can be a powerful force, but it must be channeled intentionally. There is a difference between passionate conviction and uncontrolled reactivity. The former inspires, the latter distracts. A calm speaker can still be passionate. In fact, their calm delivery often makes their passion more compelling because it is not clouded by defensiveness or volatility. Learning to stay grounded under pressure also involves developing a healthy perspective on criticism. Public figures, particularly those who challenge dominant narratives or bring a fresh perspective, will inevitably face resistance. Not all of it will be fair. Some of it will be designed to misrepresent, provoke, or discredit. But when someone understands this as part of the process rather than a personal attack, they are less likely to internalize the negativity. They learn to distinguish between feedback that is worth addressing and commentary that is meant only to provoke. This discernment is critical to emotional balance. Moreover, maintaining composure is a way to model a better kind of discourse. In a time when many conversations are dominated by outrage and performance, someone who stays calm under pressure is not only defending their own position, they are showing others a different way to engage. They are demonstrating that it is possible to disagree without demeaning, to question without humiliating, and to speak truth without shouting. They become an example not just of what to say, but how to say it. Practicing this kind of grounded communication requires intentional effort. It means rehearsing not just talking points but tone. It means preparing not just with facts but with mindset. Meditation, breathing techniques, mental reframing, these are not just soft skills, they are strategic tools. They prepare a person to walk into a high-pressure situation with the ability to think clearly, respond wisely, and maintain integrity. And in the end, that integrity speaks louder than any clever soundbite. Because when someone is calm, confident, and consistent in the face of pressure, people notice. They sense the difference. They realize that this person is not just performing. They are present. They are not reacting to the moment. They are shaping it. And that makes all the difference. In the message they deliver, preparation is the invisible force behind every confident and effective performance, particularly in high-pressure environments such as interviews, debates, or public discourse. When someone walks into a space where their ideas will be challenged, especially in a format that may be more adversarial than conversational, the level of preparation they bring can define whether they merely survive the moment or take control of it. The difference between the two is not only about knowledge, but about strategy. Being prepared does not simply mean memorizing facts or rehearsing sound bites. It means having a deep understanding of the issues, anticipating counterarguments, and crafting responses that address not only the surface of a question, but the intention behind it. Effective preparation begins with research, not just on the topic at hand, but on the context in which it will be discussed. Who is asking the questions? What is their style of engagement? What is the typical tone of the platform or setting? What assumptions or narratives might already be in play? By anticipating these elements, the individual steps into the conversation with situational awareness. They are not blindsided by tone, tactics, or framing. They are already thinking 2 steps ahead, not just reacting to what is asked, but proactively guiding the direction of the dialogue. This level of preparation transforms what could be a reactive exchange into a strategic opportunity to clarify, persuade, and lead. There is also a psychological dimension to preparation. When someone has taken the time to fully understand their material, they approach the conversation with a sense of inner confidence that is difficult to shake. They are not easily thrown off by interruptions, mischaracterizations, or emotional provocations, because they know what they stand for and why. Their thoughts are not tangled in the moment. They have already been untangled in advance. This internal clarity frees up their mental energy to remain present, agile, and articulate. Preparation also includes the art of message discipline. In any public setting, especially where the goal is to reach a broader audience beyond the interviewer or opponent, it's critical to stay anchored to a central message. Questions may be designed to veer the conversation off course, pull the speaker into hypotheticals, or provoke emotionally charged responses. But a prepared individual knows how to acknowledge the question while steering the response back to what truly matters. They don't dodge. They redirect. They understand the importance of staying consistent and repeating key themes in different forms until they resonate. This level of message control is not about avoidance. It's about purpose. The speaker recognizes that every answer is also a moment to communicate values, draw contrasts, and offer solutions. The unprepared speaker might get dragged into side arguments or trapped by wording, but the prepared one turns even the most difficult question into a chance to reinforce their point. This doesn't happen by chance. It happens through deliberate rehearsal, not to script every word, but to build familiarity with how to navigate complexity without losing clarity. Another element of advanced preparation is the understanding of how optics and language shape perception. Communication is more than the words used, it's tone, pacing, body language, and delivery. Someone who has practiced not just what to say, but how to say it will come across as more credible, more thoughtful, and more in control. They've trained their voice not to rise in panic or fall in hesitation. They've learned to pause with intention, to emphasize the right moments, and to speak in a way that invites listening rather than resistance. This type of preparation often includes mock sessions with others who simulate the types of questions or challenges the individual might face. These rehearsals are invaluable because they create familiarity with the discomfort of pressure, allowing the speaker to refine their timing, sharpen their arguments, and correct any areas of vulnerability. Through repetition, the discomfort becomes manageable. The speaker becomes practiced not only in content but in the experience itself. And yet, even with the most thorough preparation, unpredictability remains. No one can foresee every question or control every variable. But what thorough preparation does is create a mental structure that can adapt. It equips the individual with mental flexibility. They're not searching for answers in the moment. They're selecting from a well-developed toolkit of responses. When an unexpected question arises, they don't panic. They pivot. Their preparation allows them to stay within the framework of their message while still engaging authentically with the challenge at hand. Preparation also includes understanding your own weaknesses. A wise speaker does not only rehearse their strengths, they prepare for their blind spots. They identify the areas where they might be vulnerable to missteps, misunderstandings, or emotional triggers, and they build strategies in advance to manage those moments with grace. Self-awareness becomes part of the preparation process, knowing not just what to say, but how to remain in control when the conversation doesn't go as planned. In today's fast-moving media environment, where moments are clipped, quoted, and shared within seconds, every word can have an amplified impact. The prepared speaker understands this. They are deliberate not just in what they say, but in what they don't say. They are careful not to provide unnecessary ammunition to those who may seek to distort or weaponize their words. They avoid the bait. They remain mindful of the broader audience watching, not just the person sitting across from them. Beyond facts, preparation also involves aligning communication with values. The most effective communicators speak from a place of principle. They don't need to fabricate confidence. They have earned it through the alignment of belief and expression. When someone truly believes in the ideas they are advocating, and they've done the intellectual and emotional work to support those beliefs, their message lands differently. It carries weight. It feels real. In that sense, preparation is not only about intellectual rigor. It is also a moral act. It is a way of showing respect for the audience, for the conversation, and for the significance of the moment. It's the difference between showing up and truly being present. It's a commitment to excellence, not for the sake of ego, but because the ideas being defended are worth defending well. Ultimately, A prepared individual does more than answer questions. They tell a story. They bring coherence to complexity. They embody the message they deliver, and in doing so, they turn moments of pressure into platforms for leadership. There is an art to navigating difficult conversations, especially when the goal of an interaction is not to explore ideas, but to create a spectacle. In such moments, the ability to turn the tables, to transform what was meant to be a moment of humiliation into one of empowerment, is not just a rhetorical skill but a demonstration of personal command and intellectual agility. This ability comes from a deep understanding of both content and context. It requires someone to recognize when they are being boxed in and to skillfully reshape the dynamic in real time without ever appearing rattled or defensive. These moments often arise in settings where the questions being posed are not genuine inquiries but traps. They are framed to embarrass, to simplify, or to force the respondent into a false binary. They rely on the assumption that the person being questioned will play by the rules of the setup, react quickly, accept the framing, and speak from a place of pressure rather than perspective. The trick, then, is not to respond on those terms, but to subtly shift the terms altogether. One of the most effective ways to do this is through reframing. Reframing is the technique of taking a question and interpreting it in a broader or more constructive way, allowing the speaker to address the issue with clarity and depth rather than falling into the intended trap. Rather than reacting to the tone or bait of the question, the speaker repositions it as an opportunity to express a core principle or reveal a deeper truth. In doing so, they not only avoid the intended embarrassment, they elevate the conversation. For example, if someone is asked a question that assumes bad faith or ignorance on their part, the unprepared or defensive response might be to argue back directly. But someone who understands the power of reframing might say, "That's an interesting way to put it, but here's how I see it." They aren't ignoring the question, but they are taking control of how it's answered. They replace reaction with redirection, and in that redirection, they demonstrate calmness, clarity, and confidence. This technique is most powerful when it is not done aggressively, but gracefully. The goal is not to dominate the conversation through force, but to disarm it through insight. When someone turns a loaded question into a thoughtful reflection, it often leaves the audience with a sense of admiration. It shows that the person has not only thought deeply about the subject, but also has the emotional discipline to maintain control of the conversation without sacrificing their integrity or resorting to tactics of their own. These moments reveal something essential about leadership and presence. Leadership is not about overpowering others. It's about leading the conversation to a higher place. It's about recognizing that the point of communication is not just to win an argument, but to communicate something lasting. When someone is able to take a moment designed to make them look small and use it to articulate a powerful message, they gain respect even from those who might disagree with them. This shift does not require theatrics. In fact, it often comes in the form of calm, well-placed statements that invite reflection rather than provoke escalation. A carefully chosen phrase, a moment of silence before responding, or a redirection toward principle can be far more powerful than a loud rebuttal. The person who can sit in the discomfort of the moment without trying to escape it is the one who ultimately controls it. This doesn't mean the exchange becomes easy. On the contrary, such moments are often tense and emotionally charged, but they also offer a unique chance for the individual to demonstrate who they are under pressure. It is in these moments that character becomes visible, not just because of what is said, but because of how it is said. The ability to remain poised, focused, and dignified when someone is attempting to corner or belittle you is a rare strength, and one that resonates far beyond the moment itself. There's also a strategic element to turning the tables. A skilled communicator recognizes that audiences are watching not only for answers, but for authenticity. They are paying attention to tone, body language, and the underlying energy of the exchange. If the speaker can rise above the moment and stay centered in their message, the audience often shifts their focus from the aggressor to the one showing restraint. The spectacle turns into a stage for something more meaningful. In some cases, the power move is not to counterattack, but to ask a better question in return. Redirecting the conversation by introducing a more thoughtful, values-driven question changes the rhythm of the exchange. It shows that the speaker is not there to be controlled, they are there to lead. They refuse to be a prop in someone else's performance. Instead, they become the author of their own narrative. There is also power in making complexity visible. When someone tries to reduce an issue into a one-liner or force a simplistic answer, a skilled speaker can respond by explaining why the issue is more nuanced than the question suggests. This kind of response doesn't come off as evasive when it's done clearly and respectfully. It shows that the person is thinking deeply and is not afraid to challenge the limitations of the format itself. That too is a form of leadership, expanding the conversation instead of shrinking into it. Turning the tables isn't about being clever for the sake of it. It's about staying rooted in purpose. It's about remembering that every moment in a public exchange is an opportunity to bring people back to what matters. It's not about embarrassing the other person. It's about elevating the conversation so that everyone walks away with more clarity, not more division. When this shift is successful, it becomes a moment people remember, not because it was dramatic or explosive, but because it revealed a kind of poise and intelligence that cuts through noise. The individual in that moment doesn't just answer a question. They change the energy of the conversation. They break out of the role they were assigned and redefine the space. And by doing so, they turn what could have been a moment of defeat into a defining moment of strength. In the realm of public dialogue, where conversations often turn into performances and disagreements quickly spiral into accusations, authenticity remains one of the most powerful forces a person can wield. It is not a performance of personality or the replication of popular opinion. It is the expression of conviction that emerges from within, grounded in principle and guided by a sense of responsibility. Authenticity, when paired with clarity, can cut through distortion and posturing in ways that no amount of volume or bravado ever can. The heart of authenticity lies in consistency, saying what one means and meaning what one says. It reflects an inner alignment, where a person's beliefs, words, and actions are in harmony. In high-stakes conversations, this internal alignment becomes more than just admirable. It becomes a shield. Attempts to mischaracterize, provoke, or undermine fall flat when the individual responds not with a rehearsed persona, but with sincerity. Their words are not tailored to please or impress. They are spoken to express. This sincerity resonates, particularly in an era where much of public discourse is saturated with strategic ambiguity and performative outrage. People can sense when someone is speaking from a script versus when they are speaking from substance. The difference is not always in the content but in the delivery, the calm confidence that comes from being grounded in something deeper than the moment. It is the ability to speak clearly and firmly, not out of arrogance but out of an unwavering connection to what one knows to be true. What makes this kind of authenticity so impactful is its quiet courage. It takes courage to speak plainly in environments that reward sensationalism. It takes courage to disagree without demeaning, to stand alone without flinching, to explain without evading. Authenticity doesn't always look bold in the conventional sense. It often looks like quiet persistence, but its effect is undeniable. When a person refuses to be rattled, perform, or pretend, they break the script. They introduce something real into an environment that often feels manufactured. Clarity, meanwhile, is authenticity's sharp edge. It transforms inner conviction into language that others can understand, relate to, and reflect on. Clarity doesn't mean simplifying complex ideas. It means expressing them in ways that are accessible without sacrificing depth. A clear communicator knows how to distill, not dilute. They don't get lost in jargon or deflect behind generalities. They meet people where they are, offering language that illuminates rather than obscures. This clarity often catches others off guard, especially when they are expecting deflection or vagueness. A direct, thoughtful answer has the power to stop a conversation in its tracks. It draws attention not through force, but through focus. It signals that the speaker is not afraid to be understood. They are not hiding behind ambiguity or stalling with talking points. They are here to be known, for better or worse, and they trust that their truth is strong enough to stand on its own. That trust in one's message is not the result of overconfidence, but of preparation and principle. It is developed over time, through experiences that test and refine one's beliefs. People who speak with clarity often do so because they have already wrestled with complexity behind the scenes. They've done the work. They've questioned themselves, examined their assumptions, and arrived at their conclusions with care. That inner journey shows in the outer expression. Authenticity and clarity together create a force that is difficult to dismantle. When someone speaks with both, even those who disagree with their views may find it difficult to dismiss them. That's because these qualities humanize the speaker. They reveal someone who is not trying to dominate the conversation, but contribute to it. They shift the dynamic from confrontation to engagement. Instead of merely trying to win, the speaker is trying to connect, and that connection builds credibility. In contentious moments, this kind of communication becomes even more powerful. When tensions are high and the conversation feels like a contest, someone who remains calm, clear, and genuine stands out. They refuse to match aggression with aggression. Instead, they stay steady, grounded in their message. This creates a contrast that speaks volumes. It shows that the speaker is not just delivering a position, they are embodying it. Their conduct becomes part of their credibility. This embodiment is key. Words carry weight when they are supported by character. When someone consistently speaks and behaves in ways that reflect their stated values, their authenticity becomes undeniable. Audiences are not just listening to what they say. They are watching how they carry themselves, how they respond under pressure, how they treat others, and how they hold the line without losing grace. These things cannot be faked. They emerge from a place of inner resolve. And when authenticity is tested, when someone is challenged, misrepresented, or pushed to react, it reveals its full strength. A person who is rooted in who they are doesn't need to over-explain or retaliate. They can clarify without apologizing for their convictions. They don't seek approval from those who are determined to misunderstand them, nor do they water down their beliefs for temporary comfort. Instead, they return to the truth of what they know, and they speak from that place. This doesn't mean being rigid or unyielding. In fact, authenticity includes the humility to admit when one doesn't know something or to evolve in response to new information. It means being real enough to say, "I used to think differently," or "Here's what I'm still working through." That kind of honesty builds trust, because it reflects a person who values truth over image. It shows that the speaker is not performing for applause, but engaging in a real pursuit of understanding. Clarity supports that process by making complexity approachable. It helps others follow the thought process even if they don't agree with the conclusion. It invites dialogue rather than demanding agreement. And in doing so, it expands the space for respectful disagreement, a rare and valuable outcome in today's fractured discourse. Together, authenticity and clarity offer a model for how public conversations can be better. They remind us that influence is not about being the loudest, but being the most aligned, internally and externally. They show that real leadership isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's just someone telling the truth clearly, calmly, and without compromise. And that kind of truth, when it's spoken not just with the voice but with the whole self, has a way of leaving a mark that can't be ignored. In the grand theater of public discourse, moments of challenge and confrontation are inevitable. What sets true leaders apart is not their ability to shout the loudest or dominate every exchange, but their capacity to remain grounded, articulate, and unwavering in the face of pressure. The strength of a well-prepared, authentic communicator lies not in rehearsed performance but in the clarity of their values and the calm persistence with which they express them. When someone enters a space designed to discredit or diminish them and instead emerges with their integrity intact and their message sharpened, it is a reminder that composure, preparation, and conviction are still the most powerful tools we have. It is in these difficult moments that real character is revealed, not in the rehearsed applause lines or the carefully curated optics, but in the quiet discipline of staying true to one's message, even when provoked. The person who doesn't allow the tone of the conversation to dictate their response sends a clear message. I am not here to play a part in someone else's performance. I am here to stand firm in what I believe, to speak for those who resonate with that belief, and to offer something deeper than sound bites, something thoughtful, real, and enduring. Audiences today are more discerning than ever. They see through pretense, they recognize deflection, and they crave sincerity. When someone chooses to lead with authenticity and communicate with clarity, it doesn't just win arguments, it builds trust. And trust is the foundation for influence that lasts beyond a single interview, headline, or viral moment. It's the reason people come back, the reason they listen, the reason they remember. Every time a voice rises above the noise with purpose and poise, it sets a new standard. It shows that ideas, not insults, can carry the day. It proves that a calm and reasoned perspective is not a weakness, but a strength. And it challenges others to meet that standard, to think more deeply, to speak more carefully, and to engage more respectfully. In the end, the lasting impact of any public exchange is not determined by who got the last word, but by who spoke with meaning. And meaning comes from alignment, between belief and action, between message and tone, between what is said and what is truly lived. When that alignment is clear, it doesn't need to shout. It simply resonates. And in a world hungry for substance, that resonance matters more than ever.